You've been following the displacement of Palestinians, and that is not just within Gaza, but in the West Bank too. What is happening there, which we're not hearing much about?
Yeah, it's basically what we're seeing is a concerted effort by Israeli settlers in the West Bank, of which there are some, I think 700, 800,000, using kind of the cover of the war to intimidate and violently expel Palestinian families from their communities and villages. I should preface that this is not new. We've been, myself and many others to even greater extent, have been covering this throughout the year. We've been seeing an uptick in settler violence, unlike what we've seen in many, many years. But there have been reports in recent days that have been really, really concerning. They're coming from human rights groups like B'Tselem and others. I'll just rattle through some of them that I just got in my inbox this morning. In the West Bank village of Susia, which has been experiencing a lot of this recently, settlers were threatening Palestinian residents there and basically told them if they do not leave within 24 hours, they will come back and kill them. In Al-Khair, which is quite close, this is all sort of in the Hebron area, a group of masked Israeli reservists reportedly were invading Palestinian homes and assaulting them, and basically told them that if they did not put an Israeli flag outside of their homes in 24 hours, they would come back and forcibly expel them. Elsewhere in the West Bank, we've been seeing very similar things with soldiers and settlers who I think to a lot, both observers and Palestinians there, who have kind of become indiscernible from one another, have basically just been terrorizing and threatening them. And we've already seen, according to B'Tselem, that I believe 8 communities totaling around more than 400 Palestinians have been forced out of their homes. And this is just across the West Bank. So I think all of this is being done under the fog of war, presumably on the assumption that people won't be paying attention because their attention will be cast on Gaza. And that's largely been true. We're seeing more coverage of it a bit, but what we're not seeing is any big reaction, particularly from world leaders, because obviously they've got their hands a bit full right now. But it's pretty concerning.
Are you worried that Israel's ultimate aim is to push out the Palestinians completely, perhaps to countries like Egypt, but also sending more Palestinians to places like Syria and Lebanon? Is that, do you think, the ultimate endgame?
It's something I am concerned about. And I think what's important to note for people who are perhaps less familiar with this conflict is that this is kind of the perennial fear of Palestinians, both within Palestine and across the diaspora, and not for without reason, because there is a lot of precedent. But I mean, let's just say we're looking at what's been happening in the last 3 weeks. Within Israel, there have been calls for another Nakba, which, of course, is the Arabic word for catastrophe. It refers to the expulsion of 700,000 Palestinians in the war that ultimately led to Israel's creation. There have been calls to flatten Gaza, to make it uninhabitable. And there have been calls to, as you say, expel Palestinians to Egypt or to the Gulf or elsewhere. And these are not fringe voices that are making these calls. These are Israeli ministers. They're members of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's own Likud party, and even former generals and like kind of senior officials. So, you know, when these voices are coming out and they're saying that this is our intent, you kind of have to take them at their word. Now, I should note it's not just Palestinians who are scared of this. Both Jordan and Egypt came out basically saying they're not going to play a hand in the forced displacement of Palestinians from Gaza. And, you know, when I found it really interesting when people were reacting to Egypt's refusal to take them in as though it was this callous move. And I can completely understand how it was seen that way. But I think more fundamentally, Egypt cannot be seen to participate in that displacement because their people and the Palestinians generally would lose it. So that's kind of something to understand, you know, that their population simply wouldn't forgive them if that were to have happened. So, I think simply put, it is a concern. I mean, yeah, it's a concern.
How is President Biden handling this? Do you think he's having any impact on the Israelis' actions?
I mean, so far he hasn't really been seen to curtail them. I think his administration explicitly said that they wouldn't be drawing any red lines, which to any observer listening, and certainly from kind of, you know, the Palestinian side of things, is a carte blanche to just carry on. The one thing that I think is worth noting is that Biden actually, in a readout from, or in a recent post kind of detailing one of his recent conversations with President Sisi of Egypt, said that they had discussed, among other things, their commitment to ensuring that Palestinians in Gaza are not displaced to Egypt or to any other nation. So that concern that I just articulated has clearly had some cut through. The question, however, is whether Biden could actually even prevent such a thing from happening. It's become clear from the reporting that's come out since Friday that I think Biden was trying to dissuade Israel from doing a full-scale ground invasion, but more of kind of a sort of surgical, quick thing. And it doesn't seem, based on what we're seeing, like those calls have been heeded. So I'm not sure if he has the willingness or the power to curtail them in a significant way.